If you're a fan of the original Yu-Gi-Oh manga, you know where this is going. If you're an anime-onlyist, well, buckle up. Today on Scarlet Writer's Geek Corner, we're going to be discussing that chapter. This is Jailbreak. So, Chapter 4 is obviously still very early on in the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, and at this point in the story, we're still establishing the core cast. In this chapter's case, it's Anzu. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the last video was Yugi's crush, or at the very least, his attraction to his childhood friend Anzu. Reason being is that it comes up a bit more down the road, but due to how brutal the demise or fodder of an antagonist is, I felt it necessary to bring it up here. So this chapter was published on October 21st, 1996 in the 45th issue of Weekly Shonen Jump that year. The chapter begins at the Domino City Penitentiary where prisoner 777, or as I dub him, Fodder, has taken a prison guard's gun and killed him with it. First thing to notice is the face tattoos of 777 on his forehead and fever on his left cheek, and his talk of that day's horoscope, how the stars are aligned in his favor, and how anything he does that day will go off without a hitch. Afterwards, he somehow manages to escape the facility and head straight into the city. The prison authorities radioing in an emergency message on all police channels that prisoner 777 is on the loose and that he's to be considered armed and dangerous. The next panel cuts to sometime later at Domino City High School where it's the end of the school day and Jinochi suggests to Yugi grabbing a bite to eat on the way home. Yugi suggests the recently opened Burger World, the fast food place that everybody's raving about. Anzu happens to overhear their conversation and attempts to discourage him from going. She tells them that she's gotten secondhand info that the day they opened, people were getting sick with food poisoning. So naturally, Yugi is the naive and trusting type, especially when it comes to his friends. So he decides that he and Jinochi should heed Anzu's warning and go somewhere else. He suggests that the three of them should stop by the local calorie burger that's in front of the train station, but Anzu declines, citing that she has chores to do at home, and to further sweeten the deal on whatever it is she's hiding, reminds them about what their teacher warned them about, in this case being the ongoing manhunt for the escaped convict, Yugi naturally having forgotten, letting his stomach override his mind. Jinochi playfully teases Yugi about having no guts, to which the latter reminds him that said convict is currently armed and dangerous. Anzu breathes a sweet sigh of relief, believing her efforts to derail them from going to Burger World were successful. But Jinochi smells that something's up. He's not buying it. He brings up her strange behavior as of late to Yugi, to which the latter himself noticed that the newly distant attitude she's taken with them outside of school. Jinochi suggests she's putting in some after-hours work, to which Yugi doesn't quite get, given his pure and innocent nature. Jinochi, deciding to be more straightforward, suggests that she's working as an escort to make some spending money after school, even noting to Yugi that girls from other classes are doing the same thing. Yugi defends her honor by insisting that she's not that type of girl, and Jinochi is now getting a feel for how Yugi feels for Anzu. So of course, the duo decide to tail Anzu instead of going home. The further away from the school they get, Jinochi even points out that she's heading in the direction of the red light district. The closer she gets to arriving at her destination, Anzu looks behind her to make sure no one is following, but luckily they're able to evade being noticed. Jinochi is now absolutely certain of his theory and affirms that this intrepid reporter that he is will follow the illicit activities of a high school girl. Yugi getting flustered and pointing out that this sounds like a situation out of one of his porno flicks. She enters a building where Jinochi believes she's meeting her, well, client, but when they get a closer look, they see that the building that she entered is none other than Burger World. They decide to enter, and their greeter is none other than Anzu. The three of them lock eyes for a moment until Anzu slowly retreats back into the building. She begins to panic, realizing despite her best efforts to dissuade them and making sure she wasn't followed, she was discovered anyway. It turns out after-school jobs are against their school's rules and regulations, and that any violation of said rules results in immediate expulsion. She also still isn't sold on Jinochi's quality of character yet, and believes he'll spill this info to everyone. In her defense, she probably isn't completely out of line for holding such a belief, because, you know, Katsuya Jinochi was such a model citizen before. At their booth, Yugi realizes they're probably in deep shit with Anzu, while Jinochi is seemingly floored that he knows her secret. Yugi, by the way, noting how cute Anzu looked in her employee uniform. Anzu brings them their food and offers some of Burger World's famous ketchup, to which she uses to spell out a fairly subtle but clear message to the two. As she walks away from their table, she states that since they know, she should probably give the reason to risk her academics with this menial service job. It turns out she's using the bulk of her pay to save money to move to the US, more specifically New York, to study dance. She then firmly states that that's been her lifelong dream and that they had better not laugh. Yugi of course insists that they do no such thing, and I'm sure much to Anzu's surprise, Jinochi swears that he'd never say a thing about it to anybody, or else he'd have to eat 10,000 of these burgers. Though he doesn't get why Burger World makes you pay for food drowned in ketchup. Anzu retorting back that those are on her. Meanwhile, Prisoner 777, still on the run, unfortunately happens on Burger World. What's worse, he's thirsty and in need of some cigarettes, something he didn't have access to while he was locked up in the joint. Everyone inside the restaurant, including Yugi and Jinochi, blissfully unaware of what's about to happen. He enters through the front door and is greeted by Anzu, asking if he's alone to determine a seating arrangement. He confirms his lonesome and solitary status. He then pulls the stolen revolver on Anzu, threatening that if anyone makes a sound, she dies. The customers in the building erupt in a panic, him telling them to shut it. He reassures them that he won't stay long, just long enough to recuperate and leave, but in order to smoothly accomplish this, he keeps Anzu as a hostage. He then threatens to kill her if she so much as makes a sound. He then rips the ribbon off of her head and orders her to blindfold herself with it, saying that if people who lose their sight are too terrified to make any sort of noise. In fact, they do the same to inmates on death row before they execute them. He of all people should know. That's where he's been the last few years. Yugi and Jinochi, like everyone else, are completely helpless to do anything. Anzu thinks to herself that this dream she's had her whole life, does it all end here? Cut down before she's even in the prime of her life by some random convict? And like any normal human being, she's crying out, wanting someone to come save her. The fugitive demands somebody in the restaurant wait on him, and getting off on the sheer power trip he's currently on, he picks the smallest and weakest one. In this case, it'd be Yugi. He tells everyone else to get down on the ground and close their eyes. If anyone moves, she eats a bullet. Jinochi of course is angry because both his friends are dancing with the devil in his gun, and he's powerless to do anything about it. The convict demands Yugi get him some liquor and cigarettes, more specifically the Lucky Stripes brand, perfect for a guy with his streak of luck as of late. Yugi brings over a tray containing Russian vodka, a glass, and a pack of cigarettes, and a lighter. Where he got them, I honestly have no idea, but whatever. Anzu thinks about the description the convict described of the person serving them, and realizes that it's none other than Yugi. She gets up from the table and pleads for him not to get any closer. Our fodder fugitive gets enraged and assaults Anzu, trying to regain control of the situation. Yugi, upon seeing this, goes into a state of shock, and Yami Yugi emerges. He throws down the tray with the items on the table and smugly sits across from them. Yugi then begins to prey on the fugitive's insecurities and arrogance and proposes a game. Given Yugi's changed demeanor, the prisoner is finding it hard to believe that this is the same shrimp he called out. Anzu, blindfolded, listening to the conversation, is having a hard time pegging down the voice. It sounds similar to Yugi's, but due to the charisma and confidence, there's no way it could possibly be his. The convict, feeling on top of the world right now, figures it might be fun to test his luck. Yugi then clarifies that this is a game where they stake their lives on the line. They straddle the threshold of hell itself, because the loser will indeed die. The fugitive is now all in and wants to hear the rules, him reiterating to himself that because he's the one holding the gun, he holds all the cards. Now keep in mind no one else in the restaurant can see what's going on, not even Jinochi, as he literally has the dude's ass in his face. Yugi states that this game only has one rule. As long as they both sit at the table facing one another, both players can only move one of their 10 fingers, and once the game starts, that finger cannot at any point change. Yugi asks him which finger the convict will use, to which the latter confidently states his right index, so he can blow his head off with the gun, Yugi choosing his right thumb. Both Anzu and Prisoner 777 are taken back by his decision, the latter thinking he's just a complete moron. Yugi says that once the game starts, either player can do whatever they want, even pull the trigger of a gun they happen to be holding. The game begins, and Yugi immediately has the barrel of a revolver in his face. T7 is about to pull the trigger when Yugi pulls out the lighter. He then remembers that it's been so long since he's had a smoke that he forgot for a second to light his cigarette. He commands Yugi to light it, and as soon as he does, he dies. Meanwhile, this whole time, he's been pouring himself that much long-awaited drink. Yugi follows through with said demand, but keeps the lighter ignited and places it on T7's left hand, the same left hand that happens to be pouring his booze. Yugi then tells him, "You can keep the lighter, take it with you to hell." T7 realizes that if he moves his left hand, the lighter will fall into the pool of vodka and ignite. Yugi dares him to fire his gun, but if he does, the recoil will force him to drop the lighter, so he's f***ed either way. Before he grabs Anzu, he tells him that the Russian vodka is 180 proof and 90% pure alcohol. They hurry away, and the last words of Prisoner 777 are, The lit cigarette falls from his mouth and he's engulfed in flames. Anzu removes her blindfold and Yuki has already reverted back to himself. She wonders who it could have been that saved her, as there's no way it could have been Yugi. Jinochi runs towards them to see if they're alright, believing the dumbass set himself on fire, which he's technically not wrong. Anzu telling herself that she'll never forget the voice of the man who saved her. After all, she's fallen in love with them. Yugi of course remembers nothing and begins to whine about being hungry because he didn't get to finish his burger. So before we close out, I want to take a couple of minutes to discuss this chapter and how it was adapted in both of its anime adaptations. For starters, in the 1998 Toei anime adaptation, things are changed quite a bit from the manga. Glaring over the obvious, here we do get an escaped convict from prison, though here he has a name, Tatsuki Tetsu, also known as Tetsu the Hedgehog by his street name. He has the same appearance as Prisoner 777 minus the face tattoos. While he does manage to escape prison and steal a guard's gun, to my knowledge he doesn't kill the guard. Here he's also known for his reputation as a burglar, so he isn't a death row inmate. However, he keeps being beaten to the finish line whenever he works a job. It turns out one of the Burger World employees is another fugitive who managed to escape prison sometime before Tetsu, known as the Yellow Spider, Jiro. He would tail Tetsu every time he stopped by for a burger before running a job, and Jiro obviously knowing who he is, being they resided in the same penitentiary together, he'd get there first and manage to snatch up the spoils for himself. In this scenario, he takes Anzu hostage, and the events lead up exactly the same way as they do in the manga. But instead of being set ablaze, he does what Tetsu doesn't and puts the gun down to grab the lighter on his hand. However, unlike the manga, this is a shadow game, and the rules still being in effect, he's dealt a punishment game where Yugi casts a spell on him, making him believe he's on fire. I'm not entirely sure if changing this was a Toei or Shueisha decision, as maybe they didn't want the protagonist murdering anyone and thought this would suffice. I just want to state for the record, before I speak on the Duel Monsters version, that finding high quality screenshots is very, very difficult for this anime, saying nothing of course on how protective Konami and 4K media are of video clips. So, I used what I could scrounge up. But for the Duel Monsters anime, this sequence is taken out entirely, and instead Anzu is blackmailed and cornered by a perverse school faculty member who, armed with a video camera, attempts to force Anzu into, well, you can probably already imagine. Yugi somehow finds out and intervenes, but is knocked back by the pervert. Anzu tries to help Yugi by biting the freak, but she's knocked unconscious herself. Yami Yugi, however, takes the helm and challenges the bastard to a game involving, of course, Duel Monsters, but in this case it's a shadow game. They both will pull from Yugi's deck. The monster with the highest attack points will declare the winner. Our tracksuit-wearing freak draws Curse of Dragon with a total attack points of 2,000, and he gets overconfident and assumes that he's won. But of course, Yugi draws Black Magician, whose attack points are a total of 2,500. Fodder Boy gets pissed and lunges for Yugi, to which the latter simply responds with the Millennium ability Mind Crush, which I'm assuming turns our tracksuit-wearing foe into a vegetable? Honestly, it never really clarifies. Moral of the story being, at the end of the day, you don't f*** with Yugi's friends. Especially base Yugi's crush. I do also want to note before I end this video that this is one of the first interactions, albeit indirect, between one of Yugi's friends and Yami Yugi. And that, my friends, is Chapter 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Jailbreak. So, yeah. Yami Yugi's killed before. Hey, what is up everybody? Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let's get the conversation rolling and start dropping those comments in the comment section thingy below. Also, please proceed to drop me a like. It would greatly be appreciated. And hit that subscribe button, as I do have more content coming in the future. And hit that bell icon for notifications, because YouTube's got a nasty habit of, doing what they do. Also, you can follow me on the social media handles I've got listed right here. And, oh, what is that? Is that a Twitch channel? My name is Tanner, this is Scarlet Geek Corner, and I will see you guys next time.